Hello, it's Debra Jason with Creative Whispers of the Heart. And a friend of mine sent me a photo of a pelican and asked me if I could paint it. So, here he is, Pelican Pete. First, I took the photo, placed it on some photo paper, and traced the pelican onto the paper. That's a piece of graphite underneath Pelican Pete, and there he is. I took some masking fluid, this is from Winsor & Newton, and filled in Pelican Pete with the masking fluid. Then I let him dry overnight. Once he's dry, I took some sailboat blue ink, poured it on top, and you can see I'm spreading it with a brush. Then I'm using aquamarine. I'm just setting the background, no particular pattern right now. And down below is the piece of the wood dock I think he was sitting on. So now I'm ready to take Pelican Pete after he's all dried and remove the masking fluid. Next, I'm taking a round brush and filling in the colors of Pelican Pete, starting with espresso. This is a shade of brown, going around his beak. And a little bit of his feathers are brown up there. And when I'm done filling that in, I think I'm going to move down from his beak to his chest. Again, I'm using espresso and filling in his chest with some of that. Now I'm taking a liner brush, this is a very thin brush, with some pitch black and filling in some of his feathers where there's black when I look at the reference photo. A little bit on his chest there. I like these liner brushes, they're very thin and it makes it easy to outline and do spaces without really having the inks lift or blend or bloom with one another. There's a little bit of black in his tail, so I'm putting that there. And you'll see this changes quite a bit as I move forward with painting Pelican Pete. As I mentioned, this liner brush is very thin. It's a 0, I believe, and I'm using it there to outline some of his feathers. And I could probably do this with a pen, but since this brush is so thin, it's easier for me to just stick with it. I'm actually putting a little bit of alcohol on the brush and using it here, as I mentioned, as sort of an outliner. Blending up some of that ink up there so it's not so jet black. I'm lightening it up with a little bit of alcohol and getting it to bloom and blend a little bit. And now I'm going to his beak and using the black, pitch black, to outline his beak a little bit. Next, I'm switching over to some alcohol ink markers. This is melon yellow, filling in some of his beak. And then I switched to marigold. It's a kind of a melon orangey color, and that's his eye up there. Just a little circle, leaving a white spot in the middle. And going back to my yellow marker to fill in his, I guess you'd call this his crown. So I'm using a little bit of the melon yellow, and then I move on to a Q-tip or a cotton swab that has a little bit of alcohol on it, and I'm using that to spread the color, to make it bloom a little bit more, and also to lighten it up a little, up there on his crown. Next, I'm taking an ultra fine Sharpie. It's a black Sharpie. I'm putting a little dot there for his eye and a circle around that. And now, I don't want him to be stark white, so I'm actually just taking a Q-tip with some alcohol and using it to pick up a little bit of the color that's already there and blend it. That way, it's kind of a little bit of an off-white, not a stark white. So I'm going down his whole body there, blending some of that pitch black in there, so it's kind of a grayish color. Blending again some of the pitch black up on top. And again, there's no color on that cotton swab, it was just alcohol. Now I pour down some alcohol and some espresso for his body. And I'm using a lot of alcohol because I really want to lighten this up. You can see here I'm still using a cotton swab, and I'm just spreading it across his body, adding more alcohol to lighten it up some more. Now I have a clean cotton swab to spread that around. I decide to go back to my ultra fine point Sharpie and highlight or outline some areas and create some stripes, because in the reference photo that my friend gave me, it's kind of a mixed color in there. It's black and white. So now I'm using a micro tip applicator to blend some of the ink and move it around just a little bit. I don't want it to bloom a whole lot, but you can see it kind of helps to blend it. And I'm just putting alcohol on the micro tip applicator and then going over to the image and blending the color. And you can see it kind of lightens it up as well. Back to my ultra fine point Sharpie, just to put some lines in his feathers. When I look at the reference photo, there's kind of black lines and white lines. I blend it again using the micro tip applicator, putting just a little bit of alcohol on it, getting some of that ink from the Sharpie to blend in and appear a bit more feather-like. Then I'm going to go to a white gel pen and add some lines there. If I look at my reference photo, which, by the way, a friend of mine took that photo in Florida of this pelican, and there's little white lines in between the black lines. Up there on his upper chest, there's quite a few more lines, so I'm using the gel pen to add those lines in there. So here's a quick peek back to the reference photo, and I continue with the gel pen to add those little white lines on his chest. And now I decided I wanted to add some latte to his feathers. I left this clip in because what happened was I wanted you to see how I added the latte, and I decided I didn't really like it. So there I am lifting the color up with Fantastics and going back to my gel pen, adding some of those white lines, adding feathers to his crown, taking my Q-tip now and blending some color again. As I mentioned before, I didn't want it to be stark white, so I'm just taking some more color off those feathers, taking the Sharpie to highlight his beak some more, and going back to the feathers again. Now I'm adding some denim to the ocean. I wanted it to be darker there. Adding waves to the ocean Going back to those feathers with a white Posca pen to add some texture to that. Back and forth with the white and the black. Even tried a pencil, a gray marker, and then I took the microtip applicator to blend some of those colors in his feathers and in his chest. And there's a little bit of a shadow under there, so I'm taking my fine liner, and this actually has some slate on it now to do his feet. Filling in his feet. And I wanted more of the ocean. I actually just took a Q-tip with some alcohol on it to spread some of the denim that was already there. Added a little bit more denim to get it darker. And then to create the waves in the ocean, a Q-tip and a cotton pad, lifting up some color. That's slate I'm using to add to the wood that he's standing on. I think it's a dock. And then filling that in some more. Now I'm adding speckles of alcohol to create little bubbles in the air. And here's Pelican Pete, ready to go and to be hung up on somebody's wall. I hope you'll give this technique of painting Pelican Pete with alcohol inks a try. Feel free to leave a comment below. Thanks a million for watching, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe.